First up, I want to go across to MOS IT and Electronics, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, on not just the G20 success overall, but also the various issues of data, AI and crypto that have been discussed in the summit. Rajeev Chandrasekhar, thanks a lot for speaking to CNN News 18. Appreciate your time. I want to begin by asking you about the India, Middle East, Europe corridor that has been announced, and it has data at its core. Why is this corridor so important, and how do you see this benefiting India?
Well, I think this, as the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned yesterday, and certainly has been talked about in the wake of the New Delhi Declaration, I think it is a completely new look at how to create these corridors of economic prosperity that connect one of the fastest growing economies and regions, which is India, to the Middle East and Europe, and then onwards from there to North America. So I think this is certainly a reimagined view of how the infrastructure and data and a corridor of trust will emerge across the next coming years. So I think that is the way I see it, and that's the way the people of the world are seeing it post this G20 summit in New Delhi.
You know, this document also called this project a green and digital bridge between continents and civilizations. A digital bridge. What do you think that means, and why do you think it is important for India, given that India is one of those countries that has done exceptionally well when it comes to data availability and on digital aspects?
Look, I think for the first time in the history of the G20, it is certainly fair to say that this G20 presidency of India certainly has brought to the mainstream and brought to the fore the power of digital, the power of DPIs, and therefore in a lot of ways, since this G20 was a lot about talking about the future and shaping the future of a prosperous world and prosperity for all the people of the world, digital is certainly a center stage of it, and India is a case study, a remarkable case study for the countries of the world on how our prime ministers harness the power of technology to bring inclusion, to create economic opportunity and prosperity, but at the heart of it, to use technology to bring people into the mainstream of governance and development who had been excluded for many, many years. And as the World Bank report said, through technology, India has achieved in 9 years what would have taken otherwise in the area of inclusion and financial inclusion over 5 decades. So I think that is what this corridor represents. This corridor represents the use, the development of modern infrastructure, of course, on one level, corridors of trust on the other level, and third is the entire issue of using technology to create economic opportunity, prosperity, and at the heart of it, inclusion for all the people of the world. So I think that is certainly where technology figures in this whole narrative of the future of the world in the coming decade.
I also want to talk to you about the G20 member nations recommending addressing existing concerns of data protection, biases, appropriate human oversight and ethics to ensure responsible use and development of AI, which is artificial intelligence. How do you see the growing concern or discomfort with AI growth, and how prepared is India on this front?
No, I think both on AI and crypto, and I think given those two statements, those two areas that the G20 spoke about in detail, and to the larger phenomenon of emerging technologies and disruptions in the future, I think it is clear that the world's nations are now almost certainly aligning to India's views, which is that we need global cooperation, the cyberspace, and certainly all of these new disruptive technologies, including but not limited to AI, don't find themselves restricted to geographical borders, and that the countries of the world will have to figure out a way of creating harmonized regulations and harmonized laws so that user harm, whether it is from AI or whether it is from crypto, and the reciprocal concept of safety and trust on the internet are developed in a partnership by like-minded countries rather than one country innovating and regulating and policing on his own, and the other country not doing. So I think this is a recognition in a way of India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's views that the internet needs to be open, it needs to be safe and trusted and accountable for all the digital nagriks of India and around the world that use the internet and any technology and innovation that is either emerging or has already emerged.
Can I press you just a little bit more on artificial intelligence? Of course, it has been talked about for quite some time and it seems to be finally arriving. How prepared do you think India is for any disruption caused because of it? And do you fundamentally see it as a more constructive power or could it be destructive?
No, look, I think, Shivani, anybody today who understands technology and who is looking to the future of technology knows that it is very difficult to thread the needle of what kind of disruptions are going to emerge. I think the best thing that countries around the world today, including India, which we are doing, is to create a framework, guardrails, principles around which this innovation can emerge, and certainly that innovation emerges to do good, create more empowerment, create more innovation, create more economic opportunity, and rather than going off into creating harm and criminality. That is the intent. The approach is clearly principle-led, creating these guardrails. But for any country or anybody, any minister or indeed any government today to say that we anticipate all of the possible disruptions and we think we are prepared for it is really not to understand the future of technology well. I think we will all be alert to what technology will throw up, but it is absolutely an important point to understand that in the G20 this time, countries have recognized the need to work together, to harmonize their rules, regulations and laws, so that if there are such disruptions, whether they come from the crypto side or whether they are from AI or any other area, that those disruptions are dealt with and managed with and responded to by countries and like-minded countries as a whole, rather than having something which is very episodic and very piecemeal.
Okay, but you did talk about those guardrails. Now, is there anything in works to put up those guardrails, particularly in respect to artificial intelligence in India? Is anything in the works?
Of course, we are certainly very clear that we have said this, and I have said this in the past as well, that we intend to regulate AI and indeed every technology emerging or existing through the prism of user harm and reciprocally safety and trust. The Digital India Act, which is soon to start consultation, which is going to replace the IT Act, is going to be a modern contemporary framework that is certainly going to deal with the issues of safety and trust not just from the conventional internet and what we have today in terms of harms and criminalities, but also looking forward to AI and crypto and all of that represent challenges in terms of new technology and disruption. So we are very clear. I think our Prime Minister has been very, very clear up front that we want to certainly not put a brake on or slow down innovation.
Yes.
But we certainly want to ensure that innovation, those changes that are going to be the new normal, those changes are certainly only for the good of our digital nagriks and good for business and good for people and good for innovation and not cause harm. So those guardrails or principles for you to regulate user harm, we are fairly clear about, and you will see them soon with the Digital India Act as it starts consultation.
All right, a Digital India Act to come soon. I also want to add a little bit about the crypto aspect and the central bank digital currencies that have been talked about in the G20 as well. This is virtually taking forward the concerns that India as a country has been talking about. Some countries were a little bit, more welcoming of crypto, but India had always maintained that this is something we need to regulate and be watchful of.
Oh, absolutely. I think both on AI and on crypto, the world is aligning to the Indian position for some years now, which is that while we encourage innovation and while we certainly think innovation should not be restricted or regulated, we certainly don't think innovation should come in the way of creating disruptions that are either economic or that are about user safety. So in the crypto area as well, we have taken a very, very pragmatic and correct view. Our Prime Minister saw this issue way back in 2021, and we have navigated a very, very clear and very consistent framework towards crypto, which is that we support blockchain, we support innovation around Web3, but we certainly don't allow and will not allow anything that is illegal and falling afoul of our FEMA and other RBI regulations, which crypto and crypto exchanges were doing so. So I think we have argued, our finance minister has repeatedly argued that the central banks and the countries of the world have to come together to create a framework for crypto, and that is precisely what the G20 countries have decided to do. So in October, when the central bank governors meet and the finance ministers meet, I think there will be progress made on that front in terms of how the countries of the world will deal with the future of crypto.
Okay. Can I ask you a couple of more larger and political questions, if I may say? There has been criticism coming in over the last weekend, here and there, you know, the so-called waterlogging at the Bharat Mandapam that was built at a great cost, the treatment of dogs, for example, in the national capital, and even how people were displaced to conduct this summit. How do you look at that criticism, specifically coming in from the Congress party and others?
Look, I don't make anything of it. It is the Congress's almost forsworn genetic makeup that they will complain and they will find and nitpick and drag India down at a time when the whole world today, and indeed most Indians, are looking at what has happened during this G20 presidency over the last 1 year, and what has happened during the New Delhi declaration as a sign of India rising, a sign of the eminence and the respect that our Prime Minister has amongst the world's countries and world leaders. I see it that way. I see it exactly the way most Indians see it. But if the Congress party wants to see something about something else, they are welcome to do so. It's a free country. But I think you will agree with me, I hope, that most of India is very proud of what India did over this last 12 months of its presidency, and in particular the recognition and the respect and the awe that India has commanded from amongst the nations of the world, including the 20 largest nations of the world.
In fact, that was going to be my next question. What do you make of the impact that the successful conduct of this, at this scale especially, and at this level that India has managed during the Leaders Summit in the national capital? What impact do you think it can have on the Indian psyche and people, given that, you know, we've been bogged down by an inferiority complex for quite some time?
I think the impact on India and our ambitions are more than just holding an event, or I think the presidency by India of the G20 over the last 1 year has been certainly something that has left a very clear, defining, indelible mark on the history of the G20. On that there is no doubt. The fact that India is today an economy on the rise, that India as a country during COVID performed like no other country in the world, and post-COVID has performed like an economy that is really firing on all cylinders and growing. It also pretty clearly establishes to the world and the global community of investors at large that India has reimagined its ambitions. India is today not satisfied with anything less than a destination of being a fully developed country, and that the people of India, the young people of India, the youth of India, the coming generation of India are all actually anxious, energized, and in a sense dedicated to this mission of India, shrugging off decades of being seen as a poor country, as a developing country, as a weak country, and really working collectively to build this new narrative and a new ambition of India that is fast charging, hard charging, growing, growth oriented, creating economic opportunity for all Indians, doing things like in financial inclusion and technology that no other country has either attempted or even succeeded if they have attempted ever before. So this is a very different India, is certainly the consensus opinion of all those who around the world have seen India during the last 12 months and even before.
And this will be a key electoral reason cited by the BJP in the upcoming general elections, the success of the G20?
No, I don't think, Shivani, I don't think you should look at this through the prism of elections. I think The elections are won and lost, or election votes are given by the voters of India to people who, to the leaders they trust, and to certainly in the Department of Trust, in the report card of performance, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has the first 10 ranks, if you want to call it that, and there is certainly nobody even close to his track record of what he has done in terms of transforming our nation in the last 9 years.
Okay.
So I don't think this G20 in itself is any particular election plank issue, but certainly what India has achieved over the last 9 years, what India's ambitions are in the next 10 years, is certainly something that every Indian should know, recognize, and support. And by supporting that vision and ambition, they will certainly support Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji.
All right, I'll leave it at that. Rajeev Chandrasekhar, always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you once again for making time.